experience in the context of what we're looking at today, which is how do I become a leader when I'm isolated, when I'm at home. So a little bit about my background. So I started in sales, moved into training when a career in sales didn't look as if it was going to pan out for me. I started working in finance as a trainer. So I've worked with many of the major banks, some investment companies and insurance companies. And then I moved into the technical space, so tech training. But really I've become a specialist, I suppose, in sort of leadership and team development. And most latterly, I've kind of moved into a digital learning space. So my experience in terms of leading a remote kind of team is that I worked for Canon Europe and looked after 14 people across the continent of Europe, where I barely saw them. I might have seen them maybe once every 2 months if I was lucky. I also have worked where I've had a split team, so half of my team in the UK, the other half of the team in the US. So you've got massive time differences there. You've got a huge cultural divide as well. And then I've also been on the other side of the fence where I was in isolation in the UK, and my boss was based in Germany, in Dusseldorf. So I was very much on my own. They were a team in the office, and there was that sort of isolation there. So really what we're looking at here is how can we lead from the perspective of all of that isolation and that sense of being completely alone. The question that I would like to ask, and I'm going to pose it to Alina, is how do we go about creating the right environment for our teams, for us as a leader?
Before I answer this question, I want to sum up what we have seen so far during this webinar, because we provided a lot of information as it is about ourselves, and we saw on the first webinar why the change is different now, how we respond to this dramatic change, and how we can deal with that. I suggested you a survival or a vival kit made of the 3 golden rules to manage yourself, of strategies, exercises, and a special kit for parents. So we talked about how to motivate myself. Then we went through motivating others. And we saw with Nathan that we really have to understand the why, the how, and the what of every single person on our team. And Nathan reminded us that in the Maslow pyramid, we kind of fall down, as since weeks ago, we had a safety, we had the basis, and we were looking for recognition for higher steps into the hierarchy, while now we're going back to the roots, to the basics, and people need to be reassured on the safety and health, right? And as Rich told, and he told us also that there are the same parameters in motivating others, but while some of them are compulsory, are a basis they really need, there are others that need to be built. Okay, so we saw how to motivate myself, how to motivate others, and then Rich gave us a few tools to work on collaboration first, and his model is really user-friendly, easy to understand, easy to put in place, and he adapted it to the remote context. How do I use every single dimension in remote context? Okay, so before answering to this question, I was thinking about the fact that we gave you a lot of tools, a lot of informations, and giving you even more would be kind of redundant. So the first idea, and I was laughing this morning alone, and then with Nathan about this saying, "There's no place like home." It's just that the context changed a lot, and you and me and each of us, we are a God. We are a Trinity, if I may say so, because we have to handle ourselves. And as I told you, the first time you got a power all the way, my dear, it was from Wizard of Oz. So you have to handle yourself. Then you have to handle your family, be it life partner, being kids, being even family, your parents, whoever you need to take care of. And while in the past we were saying goodbye in the morning and finding together again each night, we're saying hello. Now it's gone. Is and togetherness and separateness are like inhale and exhale. And right now we're kind of suffocating unless we're finding the right balance between the me, the family, and the team. And the problem with most of the teams is that they present what I call the home office syndrome, never really working, never really relaxing. And you really have to face this triple difficulty. I am lucky. Uh, you are not that lucky as I am, because you have to manage changes on all these three levels in one moment in time, all together. For me, it was completely different. And if the previous webinars were really giving you information, now I wanted to give you a testimonial. How it worked for me how did I arrive to lead from home? Because remember, just a few weeks ago, we were all in an office, or almost, but we were all in the office. Everything was normal. And a few years ago, I was leading from an office and my life was almost normal. When I decided to work from home, to change completely what I was doing, well, actually, I passed through all the phases your teams are facing right now, and some of you are facing right now, which means I had no routine. I was not dressing up because, well, to see my kids, to see the nanny. I was only dressing up when I was seeing clients or partners for work. I was not respecting meals or exercise or nothing at all. So I became really very skinny and quite depressed, I have to say. And remember, all the examples I'm giving you applies to what potentially happens to your coworkers, to your team members. And some days I was working 24/7. I mean, I was working until 8 or 10 in the morning. So the whole night, while other days I was not working alone at all, because I didn't have a routine. It was like I didn't have any pressure anymore. I could choose to do whatever I want. Okay, I will do something, I will answer something. But there was no discipline at the beginning, because I was losing my reference points. I was completely lost. And this is what happens. And this is a don't do for any team member. The second phase that most of you are facing is when the nanny of my kids dumped me, and she was 63. She dumped me for a man. She wanted to get married when she was 63. But the impact on my life was that not only I was supposed to manage my business, but I was supposed to take care of my kids 24/7. So it was always and everything about the kids. And that was really tough. How do I manage them? And I was also fighting against computers, what I call screens, computers, phones, tablets, and so on. Because, of course, I can always let them play, but it won't solve the problem. It will only postpone it. So In the second phase, I had to learn how to deal with the kids, how to implement a routine with them, how to make them understand and respect the working space and the life space. There are moments during the day, and especially during holidays, and now we have it all the time. There are moments during the day when we play. There are moments when you are doing your activities, I am doing my work, but it has to be really clear. I mean, all this information is present on all the websites you can visit, so many articles, and we are hearing it all the time. And there are those who are really hearing, integrating, and applying, and those who unconsciously try to stick to what we used to call normality, hoping that it will be back, not embracing the change, trying to avoid it. Well, it won't give good results. So try to keep in mind that really separating the two of them and keeping a routine for the two of them is really key in really leading from home. Otherwise, in the middle of the conf call, you are going to have screams, and it's not perfect in my case either, but it works so much better. And for me, the third phase was when I really implemented all these tools. But the last complexity arrived when I was already ready. You are at this precise moment, but with all the three phases compressed in one. So my advice is really to keep things separated. And one advice, a really concrete advice for those of you who have kids, is to work by 2 hours you work, 2 hours you manage your kids, 2 hours you work, 2 hours with the kids, and so on. So they get the attention that they need, and you can work at least by 2 hours by 2 hours. This is my really strong advice for you. You have to separate if you want to have a chance to lead from home. Okay? Now, I wanted to ask John to answer another question. Is it possible to lead, or can I just manage people remote?
Yeah, I was really interested in this question because I think that this is a key question. The default reaction that I'm sure we all go to is to manage from home. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially what I mean is that we can look at our team, we can identify whether they're completing the tasks that they are supposed to be completing, whether they are working during the allotted times that we give them to work. And to a certain extent, we can see if they're getting results as well from their working from home. And that really is a very traditional, very old-fashioned way of managing people, because that's how it used to be in the factories. It's how the floormen used to be in the factories. They used to go around checking up whether people were doing the tasks, whether people clocked in and clocked out at the right time, or whether they were getting the results that they were supposed to get for the day. All of which is very short-term based. And all of which, if that's all we're doing, is going to have the end result, the devastating end result of destroying trust between us and them. Let me give you an example. So I worked for an insurance company when I was selling, and I worked from home, and I had to phone up my customers from home. Now, I received a telephone call from my boss's boss, and clearly they'd had a conversation about me in the office. And he basically phoned up and he said, John, a little bit concerned that you're not getting the results. How many people have you phoned today? How many people have you spoken to? How many appointments have you made? And when I gave him the answers to those questions, he said, so tell me, are you wearing a suit? I bet you're not wearing a suit and tie, are you? And all of a sudden, it felt like an interrogation. It really felt as if I was being checked up on And there was, from that point onwards, there was no trust whatsoever at all. So my question really is whether by default we've slipped into doing something similar to that. So I think last week Rich talked about having morning huddles. What are we discussing in the morning huddles? Does it come across as feeling like we're being checked up on, or does it come across as something which is more motivational? So what do I mean by motivational? And this is where I think that we can move into a leadership role as opposed to a management role. The thing with being a leader is that leaders are visionaries, I guess. They're there to inspire us, they're there to motivate and encourage us along the way. But whereas the manager tends to look at very short term, very much, are you getting the results right now? How much of it is in your pipeline if you're in sales? How much have you achieved today? The leader is playing the longer game, is playing a longer term. And as such, is looking to make the world a better place, probably post the pandemic. So the question is whether we are looking at the here and now and putting pressure, perhaps inadvertently, on our teams by very much focusing on performance, or are we thinking in terms of how can we make this business a success once that pandemic has gone and we go back to some semblance of normality?
I was thinking about that, but what are the tactics I can use to be an effective leader from home?
Yeah, the tactics are really interesting, and this is what I think is going to separate you as a leader versus you as a manager. Simon Sinek has just released a book talking about the infinite infinite game, I think he's called it. But basically, he talked about a finite game and an infinite game. The finite game is where the leader is very much focused, or the company is very much focused on getting the results today. In that kind of way, that it's very much goal focused, it's very much end of the quarter, end of the year, end of the financial term, whatever. Whereas the infinite leader is looking beyond that, is looking at what else can we do? What can we do to make it better? Where can we kind of expand? And the point that he's kind of making is really relevant to today, because the infinite leader is looking at what are we going to do once we come out of the pandemic? How are we going to reinvent ourselves? And we can do that on a corporate level, sure, but we can also do it on a team level. So how are the team going to reinvent themselves? Things will not go back to normal, to how they were. There's going to be a load of organizations that are just not going to make it. They're going to fold as a result of this. They may be your suppliers, they may be your customers. Things probably will not go back to normal as far as the employment state is concerned. We're going to probably lose a load of employees, and we're going to have to probably look at cost cutting for a period of time in order for organizations to get back their cash flow. So my task to you is really to think in terms of being a visionary. Have a vision of what you want this team to be, and then let's look to reinvent how we're going to operate. And I'm going to give you 6 questions to ask, and these will be found on the handouts when we give you these. But these 6 questions are essentially going to help you readdress your team and start to look to the future in a leadership visionary kind of way. First question is, I want you to ask, why do we exist? Why do we exist? This is as a team in your corporation. And essentially what I'm not asking here is, why does the organization pay your salary? What is it that your team are there to achieve in the common good of that company. I did this. I asked this question once. Went through this whole process with a board of directors down in Australia, and I asked that question: Why do you exist as a board of directors? Why do you exist? The answer I got back was just a raft of KPIs. And after I let them go for about 5 or 7 minutes, I said to them, look, I don't want KPIs. I want to know, why do you exist? What is it which motivates you? What is it which gets you up in the morning, drives you to come to work in order to achieve what? And there's some sort of personal satisfaction in achieving it. And it's not a goal. It's something beyond that, something bigger. So first question, why do we exist? Second question, how do we behave? And herein again, I've asked this question. I get a load of HR competencies and sort of wordsmiths and smithing words and stuff like that. This is not a word exercise. How do we behave is by what code do we as a team live by? We're going to operate together as a unit. By what code do we do it? Third question, what do we do? It might sound really obvious, but this is associated to the first question of why do we exist? So what do we do is the crux, I guess, of in order to achieve the reason why we exist. What is it that we have to do? I did this with an organisation, a learning organisation actually, and they were working in education. And as such, they found that when we asked this question, there was a whole load of tasks that they were doing which actually didn't dovetail into the reason why they were there in the first place. It was taking their time away from what was really important. So they stopped doing that. They became so much more productive that when that organisation took over, they were the only team which survived intact. So that's what do we do? Fourth question is, how do we succeed? This obviously is your results. This is your KPIs, perhaps. This is your targets. This really goes deeper than that as well, because it's how do we know that we've made a success of what this team is trying to do? And in that, I want you to think in terms of adding some milestones so that we know that we're on the right track as a group of people, so that we can celebrate success. And the final question, fifth, the penultimate question is, what's the most important thing right now? What's the most important thing right now? And I'll tell you why that's really important to your team members is because right now, as Alina alluded to, they're juggling home life, juggling work life. They're trying to satisfy everybody. They've got kids running around their ankles when they're trying to be on a video conference call. But it's very easy to lose that sense of direction as to what do I need to do right now in order to feel that I am participating, I am have some sort of purpose within this team, and I'm doing a good job. And the sixth question is, who does what? Sounds simple, but in order to feel part of a team, you need to know, where does my responsibility lie compared to everybody else? And therefore I won't coast. I won't just put my feet up and watch Netflix. I need that responsibility of saying, this, John, is your job. That there is everybody else's job. So I think the combination of those six, and I know I've rushed through those, and if you want any sort of further advice, myself, Alina, Nathan, we can all talk you through that at a coaching session. So I hope that makes sense. I want to ask one final question though, and I'm going to get Alina to answer this. And it's all in terms of reinventing ourselves. So how do we reinvent the team this time so that they are comfortable and happy to work from home?
Okay, so what I want you to do, because in leading from home, there are two key concepts: team in leading and home. Okay, I want you to pick one thing that you consider is the hardest that you have to face. You pick only one thing, be it team, being home. Okay, and I want you right now to write down the answer to 4 questions. Because once you work on what John proposed as 6 questions, you can apply this technique that I'm exercising with you, and then you'll be able to use it with John's questions. What is your wish? So you picked the hardest thing that you have to face right now, be it linked to the team or to your home family life. Okay? So write down on your paper, what is your wish? Done. Great. Second question. What is the outcome? So the concrete result that you want. You have the vision, you have the wish. What is the concrete outcome you hope to obtain? The third question is, what is the obstacle? I want you to think about what prevents you from achieving the outcome and realizing, making your wish come true. Identify your obstacle. Why is it difficult? What you risk to face when trying to reach your outcome, desired outcome. And the last question, what is the plan in case you really have to face this obstacle? Because the obstacle can only be in your mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy, but it can be a real obstacle. In case this obstacle is on your way, what is the plan? What do you do? How should you react to that obstacle? What is the plan? How you should behave in front of this obstacle. So when it shows up, you are ready to go. So with this technique, you can apply to any single objective, goal, vision that you have. And you have there your ready to wear answer to the question. How can I reinvent my team? Because I can give you a lot of answers, but your context is different, is specific. You know people, you know what your vision is, you know what you want to take off the game. Okay? We thank you so much for your time. So grateful that you chose to spend it with us. And I hope to see you here next week for new adventures.